Hello, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. I am joined today by a new friend of mine and a very special guest, Z. Welcome and let everybody know a little bit about yourself.
Ah, I'm just a man, sometimes good, sometimes bad, but always just a man. I've had an interesting life, I guess, according to most people. You know, I grew up, I got into martial arts when I was 6. I used to race motorcycles. I ended up at 14. I got smuggled into China, which was a closed country at the time, and through one of my masters, after one of my masters passed, and got to study at the temples there and such. And I got to a point where I was a priest, and then I eventually got taken to or abducted in a sense at a martial arts studio to be part of the Table of Ancients, which there's 10 in the world at any given time. And they put me through a series of tests that were life and death about spirituality. And at the end, I became one of them. I passed everything. And I mean, that's a long story short, but I wrote a book about it to fill in all the gaps. But I
Yeah.
could talk for hours about my experiences there. I was a contractor for military, where we would get hired to go in and do certain things that the military wouldn't. That was after I was working on a shrimp boat and our engine broke. And so I was sleeping in a park, got run out to a bus stop and got a guy who started talking to me and introduced me to a lot of money and stuff like that. And back then, it was still called more of a mercenary or soldier for fortune. And at the time, I needed work, so it's like, sure. So I met up with him, and he asked me if I had any experience. I said, not really, not in that field. And ended up being on a plane with about 20 guys, and I didn't even realize. I thought I was wearing a big, heavy backpack, but what it was a parachute. And we got into the swamps, and all of a sudden a red light came on, and it was like, what's going on, And he goes, well, if the parachute doesn't open, pull this cord and make sure you pull it all the way out to your side. And I go, like, what? And as they're pushing me out the plane, and so there was a map in the front, and I made it to the place. I think 7 of us or a little more made it back to the camp. I don't know what happened to the others, but that was my beginning on that. And yeah, throughout my life, I've been shot 9 times, been stabbed. I can't count how many, left for dead 3 times, and always seem to come back. I don't know why, but later, this is a very short story, but later I became, I started a charity through some of the experiences I had as a merc, and it was about saving kids. And when I got into it, I just started looking around. And I saw this is all fake. These people are not real. And then I ran into Somali mom, and she was the real deal. And it was kind of funny how after she decided not to be a part of the Hollywood, she said, I wanted to go back to my kids. And they says, well, you can't. She goes, well, I've been on this road for 2 years and I want to go back to my kids. So as soon as she did, they discredit her, which is what happens to any of the legitimate ones. If they don't play ball, they get, back. And today she's back doing what she was before and still saving kids. And anyway, so I started to emulate her and how she did things. And I don't really care about the rules. There's only one rule, and that's God's rule. However you want to frame it, it's, if there's a helping or a hand being held, and if you're there, you pick it up, right? And just you expect the same for yourself. When you're down and out, you lift your hand, you expect somebody to be there. So we follow those rules. We create our own rules or laws. And I can't do that in the United States. A lot of people don't realize that a private individual, it's illegal for them to rescue trafficked kids, but I can actually help law enforcement when I'm allowed in.
Mhm.
And I can tell them and describe to them, like I like this one sheriff, he called me out on it, said that everything I was saying wasn't real. And I took him to LAX and showed him every step of the process, and he couldn't believe what he was witnessing. That's how that works. So I primarily focus on Asia, where we can make a difference. And right now, I think we're closing in on 3,500 rescued kids since 2015. And when I say rescued, that means 100%. I work with so many different people in that process, but they're all healed. And that's the amazing thing. There's no therapist, no nothing like that. And we give them to ex-slaves. Once we got them in our hands and we've got them healed, then we give them to ex-slaves who teach them and bring them together. And it's more of a community of them together that open them up. And then what happens is they end up wearing the scar, and they're proud of that scar. It shows how strong they are and what they've overcome. And then once they what we call graduate, we set them free. We set them up. They have skills by the time they leave orphanages or homes, and we have things that are paid for like up to 6 months, so that they can get in and get started and create their own lives. And every one of them has been successful. One other thing I would like to add to that is, like, most of the ex-soldiers and contractors that come to me are broken in some way. And, it's kind of weird, the PTSD and all. I don't know exactly how it is. I'm not a doctor or nothing, but once they're with us, after at least one or two rescues, they don't have the PTSD anymore. And I think it's because the experience they have in the memory of what they are doing, putting everything that they had, they built all their life into this one moment. And then that happens where they save these little kids. I think that memory overpowers the memories that were haunting them. I don't know for sure or anything. All I know is that they're fixed after they work with us.
Yeah, wow, that's a lot to unpack there. I agree with what you just said as well. It gives people purpose again. When you go through great trauma, it's really hard to reintegrate into civilization. And most people don't understand what you've been through, and it's really hard to go back to normal, whatever that means. So giving them something to dive in and feel they're something passionate about that most people are not a part of, they don't understand. It's like they relate to each other, trauma for trauma. So I agree with that. And I probably should explain why I invited you on the channel, because most people who watch my channel know that I'm really particular about who I allow on, or who I invite on here. And I learned about you through Tyler and Aaron's podcast, Journey to Truth. And it prompted me to read your book, The Plejarens. I think there's 10 Plejaren Diaries, and there are 10 of them. So I ordered the first three right away. I just finished the first three, and I will order the rest because they are absolutely incredible. And when I read the book, because I read a lot of books, when I was reading the books, I felt very connected to you, and I felt something in me change. And that doesn't happen to me personally very often, but I just felt like things that I have been feeling or trying to express or relay through my own books or workshops, presentations that I've done, or one-on-one with clients, you were saying in these books through your experiences that you had with the Plejarens. And it really just opened my heart. And I just felt like I not only did I just want to give you a hug, but I just felt very connected and drawn to your story, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit more. And then I found out you and I are both presenting at the Rebels of Disclosure conference this year in May in Grafton, Illinois. So that's even more cool. So I want to get to the children because that's my passion, but I'm going to save that towards the end a little bit. And I want to talk about your accidental, which you and I both know that I don't believe it was an accidental, but how we presented as though you were in the swamp like you normally are doing your work, and you came across a Plejaren. And do you want to tell everybody kind of how that got started? And then we'll get into some of the things that I learned in the first three books that I'd love to talk about.
Okay, let me set it up first. So I was like, I had this experience, and I've got a bunch of friends that were real interested, and they were bombarding me with all these questions, and because they know who I am, right? And they wanted to know more. And so I said, well, I'll just write a book. And so I wrote a book, and I didn't plan on really selling it, but I figured I write this book, give it to them. That way they would have right good, better questions to ask me. And so I put it on Amazon just for kicks, and next thing I know, it just blew up. And but yeah, I helped train soldiers to become warriors in a sense. Like you have these large military contractors and stuff, and they send them to us to get them, situated on what they're facing, and if this is the thing. It's kind of like SEAL training times 10,
Mhm.
I guess. And we don't have any rules or anything on how we treat them. Or what we do is we put them through real life situations, the things that they could face once they do this, and to know the difference between, basically the business side of it, plus all the physical stuff. And like their introduction is they drop me with the new guy recruits off at between 8 and 10 or 8 and 14 miles out, and we swim in. And there's a whole learning process that we go through that, right? And I can go in detail on that, but the idea is hit the road or hit the road running, right? And anyway, during the process, I often, when I have downtime or something, I like to go take a walk through the swamps. And a lot of people think that's a little crazy because it's dangerous and it stinks and all this stuff. But
Yeah.
what I see in there is absolute beauty because it's just pure nature. It's not been taken over by anything other than true life. And so, yeah, one day I was out taking a walk, and I couldn't believe I saw something. And it was, when you see color out there, it stands out. And it was a blue, like a deep sky blue. And so I start making my way around, and I see that it's a lady, and it's like, and she's beautiful and she's clean. And it's like we're
Yeah.
100 miles from anything.
Yeah.
And
How did she get there?
yeah, and it's like, well, maybe it was something I was smelling or something along the way. Maybe it's actually an animal, right, or something. And so I got a little closer, and she saw me, and so I just kind of looked at her from a distance, like I would an animal. Say, an animal get hung up in a fence or something like that. Well, my nature is to go release it or whatever, and so I thought, well, I'll just play along because what I'm seeing doesn't compute, right? And so anyway, I get a little bit closer. I become real cautious, and I see she's in the mangrove. A lot of people don't know what mangroves are like, but it's like trees with the roots above ground,
Yeah.
and below it is what we call the suck. And you step in it, you sink to your knee. So I knew she was tangled up in some way, and so I just very cautiously made my way, over about 15 or 20 minutes closer to her where we could see each other. And I could tell she was rather scared. And I saw, her leg had been wrapped up in one of the roots. And so what I did was I pulled out my knife, which she kind of jumped and stuff. And I, kind of showed her by hand motions what it does and everything else. And then I was real cautious to set it next to her and where she could reach it. And then I backed up, and I lit up a cigar, and I just kind of looked off the other way and stuff while she inspected that. And then when I looked back, she had set it back down. And so I thought, okay, I'll pick it up. And then I was real cautious, and I got her out. And after I got her out and I stood back from her, she started to walk, but I could tell she was walking odd. And I knew maybe she was injured or something. And so I came closer again, and this time she was, seeing me differently. And I kind of motioned that I could pick her up and take her where she needed to go. And she agreed to it. And that was like a kind of a funny experience in the beginning because, she was probably 100 pounds wet. And she's like a little shorter than me. And so I was prepared for like 100 pounds. And when I went to pick her up, I almost threw her over me. And because they have this ability, right,
Yeah.
to change certain things. And so, anyways, so I'm carrying her, and she's kind of motioning to me which way to go. And it was a part of the swamp I hadn't been in before. And there was a big mound. And at the time, I didn't really know what the mounds were there, but later I learned about mounds and stuff. And so it was clear of any vegetation for the most part. And she motioned for me to set her down. So I set her down, and then she was like, to move back. And so I stood or moved back quite a bit. And I saw her, like bring her hands together like this. And she looked at me, and boom, she was gone. This like blue light had come down, and this like the sky opened almost right above her. And she was gone. And so I thought that was the end of it. But then it was, oh, I don't know, a couple, 3 weeks later. I hadn't really paid much attention to it. I kind of thought, well, maybe that's something I'll just leave alone, right? Leave
Yeah.
private
Or did
because
I
I don't know what
hallucinate?
really happened.
Did that happen? Right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it didn't fit anything. So,
Yeah.
but anyways, I just sort of was kind of nudged in that direction just to check it out. And I thought, well, I'll go see if there's any panther tracks or something on the mound because it's kind of neat having an open area there. And so as I got closer to it, and then, this blue light came down and I was familiar with, and it was like, well, that's kind of cool. And it surrounded me. And then I was on the ship. First thing I get to see is there were six of them, right? And it didn't look like any one of them wanted anything to do with me. And, I'm going from one to one, and they're all very tall. And I get down at the end, and Sam Jess was there, and she's going like this, waving to me. I thought, okay, we'll let it go a little longer. But the first thing I thought to my head is like, okay, am I about to be eaten or something? I
Yeah.
said, what the heck? If I am, then I'll have a great story to tell when I get upstairs, right?
Right.
That was the beginning.
Yeah, I love the story. And I just want to sidebar for a second. One of the reasons I really enjoy reading your books is because the way you write it, first of all, you write like I do, where you're just telling a story. It's like you're talking to me. And I feel like you're sitting here and you're telling me the story. But you're very comedic. You make me laugh like several times every time I'm sitting reading your books because they're funny and very articulate. And I love how you're a jokester because in your initial encounter with the Plejarens is you weren't sure if they were going to eat you, like joking, or they're very serious. They're very astute, it sounded like in the beginning, but your journey with them has changed significantly to the point where, and we can talk about this more, you taught them how to hug, and now they're more humanized in that sense, like us, like they're happy to see you, they embrace you, and they're taking on a lot of human characteristics that they didn't have. They were much more, I think, separated or individualized. Um, what do they look like? If you wouldn't mind telling everybody what they're humans. They look human, right?
They look pretty much like us, except for their eyes are larger.
And
Um,
like light
I
skinned.
know, yeah, the skin is similar to ours, maybe a little paler, not a lot, but
Mhm.
if it wasn't for the eyes, they could walk down the street, nobody would pay any attention, other than their bodies are perfect. Um, I mean, absolute, but I think they have less intestine and they do secrete some of their waste through their skin, but I've never felt it or could smell anything like that. None of that applied. So, but other than that, there have been several occasions where, clothes wasn't an option. And of course I'm going to look, right? And they don't look any different.
Okay,
I
so same
couldn't tell
anatomy.
any difference.
Same
Yeah.
anatomy. Yeah. And where is their planet? Like where is it I mean, in the vastness of our solar system, how could you like what's it compared to?
The best way I've learned to describe it, because it's kind of like asking somebody directions in the middle of the ocean,
Yeah,
right?
I
But
get
if you
that.
look at the Pleiades is like 488 light years from here, I think, and it's another 85 to the Plejaren planet
Okay. So
beyond it.
was there a reason for them to be kind of in our atmosphere, or for Sam Jess, which is the girl that you have become close with, that we'll get into her more. Was there a reason for her to even be in the swamp that day? I mean, I know the answer, but for those listening, why was she there?
It's kind of a yes and no answer. She is special, right? And she had training from what we call the Dalai Lama or something. There's a lady who is the spiritual leader of Plejaren people and many other species, and it was her best friend was her mother, who had the same name, and she basically made a promise to her to teach her the things that she needed to know, and it's really funny because we're very comparable in the sense of our life's paths, and she resisted, and she would do anything she could to avoid it. And while she was doing this, she was accumulating so much knowledge about so many multiple types of things. And so basically there was a lab ship, and that lab ship had these other people on it. The captain was a person who had pretty much done everything, and he just there was an offer for a captain to pilot the ship that Sam Jess would be on. And she decided to be what I call a stowaway. She got on this. She didn't know any of the other people that were on the ship and everything. And the captain took on that responsibility, knowing that it could ruin his career because she's, uncontrollable. And so, and it was a kind of a mix of misfits, right? And so it was a lab ship, and that lab ship didn't really have an intention of coming to the surface, but their intention was for each of the individuals that were on there to do their study. And Sam Jess thought, well, it was a way to avoid other things for now, right? And so that was the dynamic that started why she was there and why they were there. And so that was what created the accident, I think, that what I call the accidental contact. But she went off roaming and got in a little trouble, which I didn't know at the time, but that could have all been avoided and she could have been back on ship. But she was so curious, she wanted to see more. And I came along and that's where that went. Did I
Yeah.
answer the question?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, because of the spiritual nature of the type of person I am, I'm always thinking like, yeah, this wasn't accidental, and your souls were somehow attracted or pulled together some way in some way, and I feel like it was a purposeful meeting. And all these books later, and listening to the stories that I've accumulated, I believe that more and more, especially when we find out the connection that you guys have together. But before I get to the spiritual nature, I want to talk about some of the fun things. I mean, there are so many things that I everybody should read these books, because they're entertaining, but also you learn so much, and it's really nice to hear perspectives of other civilizations. And although they are much like humans, they are also, to me, in my perception, they're much more evolved and less limited in their density of consciousness than most humans, which is also a reason why they were more fearful of humans until you came along. And maybe we could talk about that a little bit, because I like that. Because I always think, in my perfect world, why can't we just have more contact? Well, I want more contact because I know the purity in my heart would be similar to yours, but we aren't the representation of the majority of the population, and they may not have reacted the way that you did, or I would, or many would. And they mentioned that to you, because I think that was a question you had at some point, or you talked about that. And they really are afraid of humans, and you were one of the first to make them see things differently. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, they weren't trained for contact or any of that. And the captain had went to a study or whatever of it, but it was, no experience with it. And it was kind of funny. I mean, there's so much in between this, but essentially when I got on there, I come to learn that I had to what I call become negative. And it's easy to say that, in other words, that you can't hide anything, you can't lie, you can't misdirect in a sense and things like that. And so it was kind of difficult. And there was like, the command decided that I use these words, they're not a pro or they're not, they don't apply, but it makes it understandable, right? That's what I call homerization of
Yeah.
a lot of things that I
Yeah.
talk about. Um, but like the command, uh, ask them to, let's see where this goes, because none of you are trained, and we have the information of the people that we do contact, or the children and things. And so just see where it goes. And it was kind of fun at first, and then I got into this dialogue with them, and it was about I was explaining human experience and stuff. And I just, talked about a man walking down the street without a shirt. And 16 hours later, they're still asking me questions, and I'm absolutely exhausted because they want to know everything about every motion, so that if they would experience, they would know right what was happening, right? And so, I told the captain, hey, look, I need a break from all this and stuff. And I says, all's good and everything. And he was ready to think, okay, well, it's over, right? And I says, well, you give up earlier, easy. I said, family doesn't do that and stuff. And so that kind of changed the attitude. And so I went home, and I was home about, I guess, 3 days or so. And I have a real tiny apartment, and I don't really have furniture. I've got a bed, basically, and this computer chair. And I feel this like static and stuff. And here it was Sam Jess, and she shows up right in my apartment, and I'm watching like a sitcom on TV, and she's like, "What are you doing?" And I says, "Well, I'm watching this show." And she goes, "Oh, okay," because she wanted to see, I mean, that's a good way for teaching people how we react to certain things and do certain things. And so she sat down or lay down on the bed next to me, and we're watching it. And, she asked me questions a whole bunch of times. It's like a 20-minute show, right? So then I played a second time and a third time, and she's starting to understand what their reactions were for what reason. And then I played it again and again and again. And she asked me, so why do you keep playing this? Isn't there more? And I said, this is what I'm experiencing on your ship, right?
Yeah.
And it's driving me insane and stuff. And so we made an understanding, and I started to be able to use film as, a teaching tool. So, it was like the introduction, and then they could ask me questions, and it went way better. And we kept evolving from that. And then, but the thing about going on the ship, I had to like put in my head, well, when I get on the ship, I flip the switch, right? Where I'm completely naked, where I can't hide anything. And it's really a difficult thing to do. And so, it's very difficult. And so I'm there one time, and Hans, he's one of the lab rats, I call him, and he told me that there was that we're scanned, right, and we're removed of all of our bugs and replaced with other types of bugs that are sterile, and that on our bodies to maintain our normal, being. And so they said they noticed all these scars and was wondering where those scars came from. And I thought, oh man, now they're going to see the monster, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
uh, because I have 9 bullet holes, I got multiple scars and from life. And so I start to try to explain it, but it's like, this isn't working out very well. They're not understanding me. And so I said, let me show you a movie. And I couldn't really think of anything except for one called Taken.
Yeah.
And I said, now this isn't me. I says, but it shows, what we will go through for somebody we love, and, what those limits are and the kind of things that would happen. And so I arranged with Sam Jess to show her, nobody else, just show her to get this rolling. And it was kind of funny as we go to her room and we're laying in her bed, and there's like a screen that goes over us, right? So we can watch this, and we're watching it, and she's crying, and then she digs her nails into my skin, and through all the emotion that was going on and what was happening. And then at the very end, she's like pulling herself right up so her face is right next to the screen. And that's right after he shoots the bad guy, and he's got his girl back, and they hug and everything, and she's all crying and everything, and rolls over me, and I hear all this noise out there and find out they were all watching the same show. And I thought, oh, this is like my
Uh-oh.
last day on the ship.
Yeah.
And see, I had become really addicted to them because of the love. And it
Mhm.
was unconditional, and that, and it redefines everything to me. And I keep seeing, even today, love is not definable. It's so expansive. And so, anyways, I'm fearing what's about to come, the monster. Let's get the monster out of here or whatever. And finally, Sam Jess comes back, and she goes, come out, I call it the living room. That's the front deck. And so I finished my coffee, which they had the perfect coffee up there. It's just
Uh,
awesome. So,
every time
anyways,
you get your coffee, I'm like, man, I want to try that coffee because I love coffee. So I'm a coffee connoisseur. I'm like, that sounds delicious.
it's perfect every time. But so anyways, and it's even better when the white girls give it to me, because then it's sharing, right? And
Yeah.
but anyway, we can go into that later. But
Yeah.
anyways, I make my way out there, and I feel like a cartoon character with my arms down, my head down, like, oh crap, this is the end of it, because I've become so addicted to these people
Mhm.
because they're so beautiful. And I mean, and I just feel good with them. And so when I get out into the living room there, they were in a group, and it was weird. I was waiting to see what was happening next, and next thing I know, they start putting their hands on me, like on my back and stuff. And I've been in this before, like when I go to churches and speak. I've had where there was several different pastors from different churches attending my speech, and they would come up and lay hands on me and pray for me, and I could always remember the feeling of the power there was in that because of the love. And this time I'm with the family, and I'm wondering what's going on here. They're pushing on me and stuff. And I just fall to my knee, and I just released. And, I'm not one to cry normally. And all of a sudden it was just pouring out of me and I couldn't understand the feeling that was going on. And they loved me more because of what I shared with them and the things that I had went through. And they also, I told them many people have scars and stuff. It's just part of life. And so they had this, they felt, sorry for us in a way, that we have to live the life that we do. And so it was all good. So it just continued from there.
Yeah, that I love that part of the story because I could feel your emotion as you're writing that part of the book of I love these people unconditionally. This is what real family feels like, and all these things that you were sharing with your experience. And you had this brief moment of fear of, oh my gosh, if they knew this about me, are they going to be afraid of me too? Because if this is how they look at humans, and then they see that I did these things, are they going to understand or discern the difference between why I was doing these things versus why other people do these things? And they did, because when you're in that level of connection and absent of the lower vibrational emotions and you just connect, you can see everything. And that's why you're saying you can't lie to them. Just like they
Mhm.
couldn't lie to you. And so they saw it all. They felt your emotions, your pain, your experience, your everything. And I think it just deepened the bond. And I thought that was really, really beautiful. And I love how you used movies to to help them understand Earth and how it works, because that is such a great tool. And I
Mhm.
loved even more how you would use movie slang, and never did they get it. But the reader does. So I'm laughing along
Mhm.
with you as you're writing, and you'll make a joke about something using a line and a tagline in a movie that has some relevancy to what's going on in the moment. And they're like, what? And then you're like, never mind. And as the like, it's just so engaging. It's really great. These are so well done. I just want to say that it's such a pleasure to read. Um, and I really empathize with your feeling of this unconditional love, because in my opinion, at least the density of consciousness that we have in the third dimension where we are here, I think it has a lot to do with ego. The closest, in my perception, of unconditional love that I can sense on this planet, and at least in this reality or where I'm connected to, is animals. They're the only beings I've ever met in this planet and this life where I feel unconditional love, never with, not with any humans. And I believe that that's because there is some sort of ego involved. Even with my husband, who I love more than the world, or my children, there's always some notch of ego involved. So it doesn't allow yourself to fully embrace that unconditional love. And I think the only time I've ever felt it is through the birth of my children, those moments where you hold your baby for the first time, and that purity that you can't describe it, there's no word to describe it, is that sense of that moment of this is what unconditional love feels like. Nothing else matters. And I really felt that connection that you were feeling with them when you're on these ships, and how they relate to you. Um, gosh, there's so many things I want to talk about. The wall coffee was one of the things that I thought was funny. And where does okay, this is a silly Earth question, like 3D question, but where does so they hit things on the wall and it can create furniture, food, and they eat these pellets that's probably just nutrition based, that you say are gross, but where does it come from and how does that work? Is that just like holographic and maybe you're not even really eating or drinking? It's a perception of it. Like, what is it?
It's the real deal.
Okay.
It's kind of like we go to the microwave, right? It's kind of the same thing. You open the door of a refrigerator, except for it's in their wall. And I do describe what the little gray balls are and how they're created. And it's pure nutrition is what it is. It's a living plant with living soil. And
You go
it's a
into
long
that.
story, but
You do go
yeah,
into
they
that,
took
I
me
think,
in.
in book three.
Yeah, and then the what else was there? Oh, the one thing I wanted to bring about is the love, right? And I've had experiences deeply in both directions, right? Because of the life that I've lived and the way I see things. I see things very more truthfully than a lot of people do, because it's a game and people are so shallow for the most part, and it's hard to find real people. And the consciousness is a really big deal. The like the magic, what we see is magic, right? it's not magic. One of the things that they liked was one of the, I'm not a Bible thumper, even though I use a lot of comparisons because they're very, it makes it easier to understand.
Right.
But like they liked when I told them about, because they said we're all equals, including me. And it took me a long time to understand what they really meant about that. And like Jesus said one time after healing a bunch of people, you, the people of this earth, you, the people of this earth, can do all that I can do and more. And they really like that because it's absolutely true. We limit ourselves so much to what our capabilities are. The way that we are, when you say magic, you think of people levitating or walking through walls and stuff. We have those capabilities. It's about how much love that we have stored in our brain. Like we use our full brain, but there's still all this room in there to expand. Our next evolution is to fill the rest of what our brain has to collect memories of unconditional love. And it's kind of funny because that's one of the keys in order to open the door to enter into what you truly seek. And a lot of people say, well, I don't have any memories of unconditional love. I said, you ever had a pet? And it's like, oh yeah. And suddenly they have this memory of unconditional love. But what it does, it just sets the frequency within ourselves in order to access other things. And then the more of those memories of love that you create, the more ability or the higher you are connected to your consciousness. Have you gotten to the part where they explain to me what life is and what consciousness is?
Well, they relate to it in every book in different ways. So I've gotten a lot of what they represented. You explain it in a lot of different sections. I think what I want to get into is the death experience, because that was just the most miraculous thing that you wrote about so far that I've read. That experience. I don't know if that's what you're talking about, or we can talk about what you're saying first and then get into the death experience. Because that
What
was
was the death?
when Sam Jess told
Well,
you, do you want to die with me? And you
oh,
went on it wasn't really dying, I mean, obviously, but you went on the journey, and it was just really, it touched my heart in such a profound way, because to me, I understand that there is no death, and that's not what she meant. And that's the experience you had. It's just the absence of the life. It's like the in between. It's just pure consciousness and everything all at once, but separated and physical and non-physical. There's no words to really describe the experience you had, but it's to me, that was what consciousness is. It's the experience, it's a connection, it's everything and nothing all at the same
mhm.
time.
Well, like they are talking about one of the journeys that we took. I call it traveling, and that was like our love for each other has. There's so much here, right? We're a
Yeah.
quantum entangled, right?
Yeah.
And of course, I got all the looks and the brains, and well, anyways, that's what I tell her.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
but
yeah.
we're actually one person in a sense. But she was on one plane of existence, I was on another plane of existence that merged, and so that's how we came together in a sense. She's just 200 years older than me. And then like there is no such thing as death, and we're not really here. In a we are and we aren't. We're here consciously, but we're not here physically, that like we presume. Um, the way I use it, I homerize this a lot, but it's the way that I can make understanding of it. And like I do a lot of things, otherwise I would never be able to comprehend what they were telling me. But basically, we never die. And like when we see ourselves as human in different lives, right? And we see them as past lives. Some people see them past and future. Well, if you imagine consciousness, this big void in space where there's a big puzzle board, right? And on top of it is this guy with long white hair and a robe, and he's sitting on a big lazy boy and he's watching all these televisions, right? Well, each one of those televisions is you or me or whatever, one of us, and each of those televisions are all of our lives taking place at the same exact time, because there is no such thing as time. There's only moments, and that one this project we're a projection basically. So when we are here in this body that we think of, it's just a projection. And when that projection has a death, like if we would physically die, we think we died. It's just the end of that projection. And but each of those TV sets has a series on it, and we're the star of each of those series. And so when we die, we just don't vanish. It's our essence is applied to a piece of that puzzle, which is consciousness. So our essence is on this consciousness, which is projected to wherever, like for us, it's here on Earth. And when we die, that puzzle, that fragment goes back to the consciousness, and uh, basically all that information goes to the full consciousness of all things. And then that piece of the essence goes to what I call like a museum up there, which is accessible. So if you see, like I saw this one video of a ghost hunter, and it was Lizzie Borden's great 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 grandson or something like that, right? And he's actually having a communication with Lizzie Borden. His perception of that was he was having a conversation with her from then, but in reality, he was having a conversation with her now because she's still alive in that consciousness. So, when you start putting those little
Yeah.
threads together, you start to understand everything is pure consciousness. The fabric of space is consciousness. Everything, anything you create or build is consciousness. We just recently had an experience where we went to a planet of eternal beings, and it was just the most amazing experience I can hardly describe. But when we got out of the shuttle and onto the planet, everything there was obvious consciousness. You know, we could see the trees would bend towards us, the mushrooms on the ground and the grass. It was all absolutely alive, and inside of us, we felt this immense creation of love, and we were sharing that with each other, and that's what drew the eternal ones to us, to so that we could actually communicate with them. But so anyways, that's kind of the synopsis, the little tiny
I
part of
know.
what.
Zaysan, I feel like I'm geeking out right now because I feel like I'm involved in like one of the coolest book clubs ever, but I'm with the author and not just a group of people talking about a book. And the reason is because I know within my heart and soul, like this experiences that you're having in these books that you're sharing, I have had them too. I know them to be truth because I connect with it and I'm like, yes, yes, yes. I keep saying, yes, that's right, that's right. I've felt that before. I've seen that before. I know I've been like there, something like there before, wherever there is, because a lot of times you don't even know where you are. And I think that's a common question that even I ask, oh, where is it? But we have to get out of this, okay, what planet are you and where exactly is it? Sometimes it doesn't really even matter. It's just the experience that you're having. And this is such a cool conversation. I wanted to take it somewhere fun real quick because I'm an animal person. Even as much as I work with children, animals are my passion as well. So my favorite part of, I don't even remember what book this was at this point, but where you took Sam Jess because, and this is something that I've seen in a lot of sessions that I do with my clients. Most other planets that I've ever looked into or tapped into or civilizations, they don't have pets. We're very unique in that. And that's something I've been talking to people about for years. And so the idea or notion that we have pets here that you could pet and hold like was kind of off-putting or not off-putting but weird to Sam Jess and the rest of the crew. So you took Sam Jess not only to a pet store but they brought one back to the ship. Can you talk about it? Because I loved that part of the books. I think you talk about
Well,
that in many of the books, but
not to be a spoiler, but we have two now.
yes, you do have two. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it was funny because they were terrified of animals too. And so I did the thing. It's kind of comical to me anyway. I start showing them pet videos, right? And
Hmm.
they start to come around, right? And then Laura, that's one of her base studies is animals and things like that. And they just got addicted to watching like the cat and the dog videos and stuff like that. And so, anyways, I wanted to introduce Sam Jess to some. I thought that would be a great field trip, right? And so it was really funny. She was kind of afraid and everything, and it's like, well, okay. And so I kind of convinced her to come with me. And so we go to one of these big pet places, and where you can see the animals in the windows and you can adopt them and all that. And she's seeing them and she's getting more and more comfortable with them. And so I thought, good, okay, well, would you like to pet one? And she just kind of looked at me and it's like looking like a little kid that just suddenly got afraid, right?
Yeah.
And I said, it'll be okay. It's normal. It's everything. They're not going to eat you or anything. We'll get one of these little kittens and stuff. And she kind of looks at him a little bit longer and then she goes, okay. So I get a hold of one of the attendants and she goes, okay, we'll come out here and there's a little fenced in area in the center of the place, where you can sit and meet the animals, right? And so I asked her if she could bring one of the kittens out. And she said, yeah, sure. So we go out there and Sam Jess is sitting in the middle and it was like she was waiting for like a firing squad or something. I mean, she was so petrified, but she was willing to do it. We had built enough trust at that time with each other that we understood each other. It's like when
Yeah.
you say the key word, trust me, that's like gold, right? And so anyway, she's sitting there and she's all nervous and everything. And they don't sweat or anything, but if she could, she would probably have been rolling out sweat. But she's sitting there in the center with her back towards where they're coming from. And the lady, the attendant, brought out all the kittens. I mean, there was like 5, 6, 7 or 8 kittens. And I'm thinking, oh crap, it's too late now. And so, the lady gets into the pen and she's holding the basket down and the kittens are taking off. And Sam just like really freaks at first. Like she's frozen. She sees all these little kittens and everything. And I just explained to her, I said, look, just relax, let them do what they want to do. Don't touch them. Don't do anything. Just let them do. And they start crawling all over her. And at first she's really nervous and frozen and stiff. And then you can see her start to melt because how cute they were, and how they were playing with each other and stuff. I said, just lay down. So next thing you know, they're crawling all over her and she gets brave enough to touch one and she goes, so soft, she's like, she's afraid to squeeze them and everything.
Yeah.
And then after that was all over with, I said, so do you think you'd like to take one to the ship? And she goes, I want to take all of them. You know, you want to take, I go, no, 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 that doesn't work. And because they have a return policy and things like that. And so I just wanted to see how it went.
Mhm.
And next thing you know, most of them are all in love with her, with the kittens,
Of course.
I mean the kitten. And it was kind of funny too that as the cat grew, it could walk up, it knew how to touch the wall and
Better than
get the
you.
food and
Yeah.
everything. Yeah. And it's like, how is this? It had two aliens on board and the animal is smarter than me, and it was a couple years. I understand now why. And that is because how they speak their language. They can talk to animals. We can talk to animals. It's, phonetics, where the like metal board that shakes, right, and creates those forms with sound.
Uh-huh.
That's how their language is. And they speak with the tones that string together. And that's how they can speak my language or any language here, because all languages have a certain rhythm or tone to it. And all they got to do is match that. And it's easy for them to adapt from one to the next. And so um, that's one of the things that they're able to do is you can, especially animals, you can talk to the animals through the different tones. And it's interesting to me because I had a cat for 27 years, I think it lived. And, it creates its own language. Cats create their own language for their owner. And so that's how they communicate. So with each person, they'll have a different language in a sense. And so it made total sense to me when I started to understand their symbols and how they speak. And that's why the cat was so much smarter than me.
Yeah, and everybody on the ship really adored Kitty. They ended up calling her Kitty and just became
Yeah,
part of the ship and would gravitate all around. And I think Laura was the animal researcher
yeah,
that ended up having her around the most, probably because Laura was learning something perhaps from the kitty, and the kitty knew that.
yeah. Oh, she totally loved them. Her quarters is like a cat house. It's got everything, and so they just gravitate to her. She's got that, and she loves them. So
Yeah.
it's great.
Yeah.
Most of us they're kind of an annoyance at times, but everybody likes the cats except for maybe mother. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Well, and in my house, one of the things that we do to de-stress or just to have fun with my kids is we put funny cat videos. I talk about this all the time. Like that's our favorite thing to do. We sit there and we crack up forever watching animals too, but mostly cats because they do the funniest stuff. So
I know.
I related to that because you kept talking about them watching the funny cat videos. So oh my God, there's so many places I want to go with this, but we don't have all day. So I just want to get to kind of the message of or the reason I think you and Sam Jess came together, and then I want to talk about children a little bit. So the way I sum it up, maybe for the audience, is Sam Jess is of this royal essence, and she is about to embark on a journey to be kind of the leader of her people, and being the rebel she is, or just the nature of who she is, she's not sure if she's ready for it, and all of these things. And I believe you coming into her life, as I'm reading your story, you have guided her in so many ways, and mother has always said to you in many different times, go help her. And you're like, what do how can I do that? What do you want me to do? But you always know exactly what to say. And I think that comes back to you being these twin stars, which you've discovered that you guys are in essence the same soul. And who else better to help her than herself? But in this other wise, conscious being of Zaysan that can talk to her and know exactly what she needs. And I just think this journey with her, and now I haven't read all the books. I have no idea what's going on now, but through book 3, she's finally embraced her role through for various reasons. You guys will have to read the book to see the books. Then she adapt, and then she's now you guys are on this bigger ship. And so talk about the progression of Sam Jess and how your role, I think, in helping her kind of embrace herself, because I think that is the best part of the whole connection.
Well, it was like, we're so much more than just a quantum entanglement. We're very reflective, and it's interesting because she answered one of the 2 questions I had about my life, and then a close friend of mine, answered the other part. But it was like I was going through all, like, she's running, right, and she's learning all these things, and I one day we're just sitting here, and they don't sleep really. They like 20 minutes, more of a meditation sort of thing, and I sleep, of course, and so it's really weird. Every time I wake up, she's sitting there staring at me while she's doing this. And anyways, that's a whole nother story. But I I asked her about my life. I said, because I've done so many things. I mean, just about any job you can think of, I've done, right? And I was curious why, because it felt to me like one would end without my influence, and I would move to another one, and then I'd excel, and then again, it would change on me again. And I ended up living in different countries and many different states here in the United States. And I asked her, why is it that I've had so many of these things? I mean, I've got these degrees and everything. And I was like, why can't I just settle? Right. And she was funny. She goes, and she's explaining to me why she was running. And it is to collect the memories of her ancestors so that they become hers, to make a person larger, right? Bigger, and have more wisdom and knowledge and such. And she goes and hits me in the chest like 3 times, just like you. And
Yeah.
it's like, oh my God,
Yeah.
she just revealed to me that, and it was like, it made every bit of sense in the world to me. It's like, that's what I've been chasing. And, now I'm on free time. That's a whole nother story. But anyway, so when we relate, like when she was supposed to be introduced, right? And all the Plejaren people loved her mother so much, and everybody's sort of waiting on her. And those people are funny because they look for any distraction, and they're all in. And because they work all the time because it's their passion, and there's many reasons for that, but everybody does their passion, and there's no monetary system or anything like that. But they love gossip. And way I see it is they were looking at her like the what's her name? Di,
Oh,
Lady Di.
Diana.
Yeah, Princess Diana.
Yeah.
Because it's like the projection, right? That representative of the people.
Hmm.
And so we go to this colony, which is another beautiful story, but this colony, and she just like totally locks up. She's frozen. And when we're at the ship, and she's supposed to be walking down these hallways and stuff, I refer to it like like a big mall, right? Where you have layers or tiers and walkways, but all the people live along these walkways. And the idea was for her just to make a walkthrough and go around so that people could see her and that she could understand, the love that they had for her. And she just locked up. And so I, using just my earthly knowledge of things, it's like I got the protector, which is like security. They don't actually need security, but they're kind of like the organizers and arrange certain things. And so, anyways, I asked mother, I says, let me tell this guy something because I mean that was my life, right? Not on ship or anything, but being a protector or a security and sort of thing. And so I got him over there and she had told him to do whatever I told him to do. So I made rearrangements with him in order to make her feel more comfortable that I knew would allow her more freedom and be more comfortable. And once we took care of that, it was like, okay, she was kind of ready. And so I gave her the strength. It was like, okay, I'm going to dictate to her what she's going to do. In a sense, sometimes that's what people need. And I felt that was appropriate. And then us knowing who we were, right? One person in a sense on two different planes of existence that merged, right? And so I got her up there and it worked. And when she started walking down that way and she saw the love that was being, that's one thing about them is they can't deny love, right? It's so powerful. And that, that could open up a door for us to talk about too, a big thing. But anyways, yeah. And so she was able to experience that. And then she finally understood it. And she
Yeah.
felt so much love from all those people that she knew she was in the right place, going the right way.
Yeah, I remember reading that part, and I think it's just the expectation. Because if I put myself in her shoes right now, being asked to be placed in this role, there's a lot of pressure involved in that.
Yeah.
And most people who aren't coming from ego would want to run because they're not sure, or maybe they don't want that attention. And certainly I wouldn't. But in that moment, I could feel when she felt the presence of so much love, she dropped that feeling of expectation or fear, and she just embraced the love. And that little girl that came running over to you guys and
Mhm.
ended up talking to you more than her, and she was talking to the mother. I think she just lost herself in the experience. And next thing you know, I think you even said in some way, like she was really enjoying it. She was enjoying
Yeah.
herself. And she really, and mother watching from another place that you had told them to kind of wait and watch and observe, they were so proud. And everybody watching, they were so proud of her. I think that's
Mhm.
true for a lot of humans. They're very human. Like, we have all these expectations and fears and we build it up in our mind. But then if we just come from neutrality and then we allow the love, then everything else just exists and it's not as scary. That's kind of how I
Yeah.
felt about it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
cool.
And a big deal that relates all of this is that the brain and the mind thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
our brain is survival and
Yeah.
it's very limited. And so as right now we're to a point where our brain has done what it can. And here's one thing that's really important that I think a lot of people don't understand. And that is that to create a memory, right, in our brain, it has to have references and to whatever it is that we're experiencing. So say we experience something horrific, and it happens so fast and we're so afraid, we shut it off as soon as it starts. And we assume all these things because of the references that the brain has, but the brain doesn't have a reference for it. It makes it up. And it uses the core experience of the fright or fear to
Mhm.
complete it. So the whole memory becomes it's real and it feels, horrible or whatever. And so that's where our brain is. And we have to start using the mind because the mind is where you access the love that's contained within the brain. And that when you get references from the mind, it's pure and it's sent back to the brain. So we need to come first with the mind or consciousness before we come with the brain. And that's also very difficult for people to do or understand. And this is really hard. Okay, say like you're at the pyramids and you're coming to a mystery of the pyramids and you're trying to figure out all the links that apply in order to complete whatever it is that you're experiencing. And the reality is you're never going to find it if you don't have the proper reference. And even if you do have a proper reference, it's going to be mixed in with all these other references that are there. But if you come from the mind, you absorb all the experience and just go with that and let those things you don't understand go. Because what'll happen is probably in shorter time, you'll something will come up out of the blue, completely unrelated, that fills the gap that you were missing. And now the mind has a reference to send to the brain to make sense of those sort of things. So,
Absolutely. I totally
anyways, I had to
agree with
throw
that.
that in there.
I
It's
mean, it's almost
important.
like, you know that, you remember that game back in the day? I used to play when I was a kid. I don't even know if they still have it. The Mad Libs, where it was a story, but then there would be blanks and you could fill in the adjective or the noun or whatever to like make the story,
Mhm.
and you can make it unique. I feel like we overthink everything. We think too much. And the problem
Yeah.
with us as humans, we think so much where it's like we got to fill in those Mad Libs. We got to fill in the blanks and if we're in from a place of having to understand everything and our brain has to process everything and make sense of everything, we're automatically going to fill those spaces with things that may not be true because we are coming from fight or flight. But if we just surrender and we just let go to the experience, then our consciousness will fill in the blanks as we go. That's what knowledge is. That's
Yeah.
how we learn and explore. And I think that makes a lot of sense what you're saying. The mind is our biggest challenge here, at least as the humans that we're operating from. I don't know about the Plejarens, like maybe they're a little bit different than us.
Mhm. Well, I've actually applied this with other people and it works. But, in order to access the mind or give the mind more power over the brain, like when you go into a state, right, and you want to travel, I forget what people call it, whatever, out of body or whatever,
Yeah.
that's like a gateway. And to do that, like say you're meditating or you're just laying down and you're trying to leave and go somewhere, right, deeper, and the first thing you have to do is whatever appears, believe it. And I mean, with all you have is believe what it is that you're seeing, even if you don't understand what it is, and then trust it, and then apply the love. And what happens is the door comes down, right, and you actually, and then once you're in the door, say you're good looking, you can't have an intention, because the intention is probably coming from the brain and it's probably not what you truly want. It's like when I explain prayers, when people pray, they always put all these addendums to it, right? And what they expect and what they want. And they don't understand that every prayer is answered. And the thing is that when they actually see it manifest, then they call it a miracle, which in reality is they got all the other ones they ask for too. But what we think we want isn't necessarily what we truly want.
Exactly.
And so when you're bridging that gap and you enter into it and say you see a being in front of you and you see all these other really marvelous things you don't quite understand, but you're so interested in, forget that. That being that you saw, you go to that being, and then you give eternity to experience that being. And if you do that, all the other stuff starts to make sense.
Mhm.
But if you try to take it all in at the same time, it's going to be a failure. I mean, in a sense, right? You're not going to get all that you could have if you just didn't focus on that one blade of grass in the middle of the meadow.
Yeah. Yeah, we limit our own experiences. You're so right. Everything you're saying, I really agree with that. And I guess that kind of brings me to my next thought. So you have experienced unconditional love, this level of like connection that you probably have never felt in this life as Zaysan, right? Into this capacity. But when you're working in, like, you're doing something um, very important, which is helping rescue children, which is something that is probably one of the most important things that needs to be taken care of right now is rescuing these children. And I focus on educating and helping them thrive. Both are very important, but the work you do is different than the work I do because I see children at their best for a lot of the times. You are seeing children in their worst situation. So I have to pick your brain a little bit about how you think when you represent this higher consciousness of unity and oneness and unconditional love. And then you're brought to these situations where it's not, I don't want to say exact opposite, but it's very low and very dark. What do you think is going on with the reality that that happens, like the people that are partaking in this, like to be at the in that level of consciousness and vibration? It has to beg the question to you of how did they get here? How did this happen? How did we even get to this point? And in all of these rescues that you've done, like what are some of the things that have helped you define that answer? Or maybe you're still trying to figure it out. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, who are these people? I also wrote a book, Operation Z, and it explains my transformation into be witnessing what I was witnessing is that all these kids being traded and sold and the things that they would do to them. And a lot of people don't understand. Like there was a person that I really respected that didn't believe in the death penalty, and they also didn't believe in pure evil. And there is pure evil. It's the loss of consciousness. I don't know how it goes about happening, on the conscious side, but people give up inside and they allow whatever it takes in order to survive. But then they lose that the whole reason that they converted, right? That they went into that darkness and they can't go back anymore. But they don't know that when they first enter it. They think they'll jump in and take care of business and then return and now they'll have money. Money seems to be the motivator for all these things because, I mean, if you had like it always cracks me up when these people talk about, how could somebody do this or how could somebody do that? Well, if they've never been there, they wouldn't understand it. Like I've met so many people, mothers and fathers of these children who they sold to the bad guys. And the first thing that comes to your mind, right, is how could they? But it's not that way. When you really understand these people, they're so desperate and they're willing to believe that they're going to be taken to a place to go to work and that they'll send money home, right? And they truly believe that because they have no other choice but to believe that. The husband may have had an accident. Now he can't provide. The wife, she can't do anything to provide for the most part. They'll pick up trash. Like in the Philippines, there's this place called the Smoky Mountain. That's where they do all the dump. And they'll go in and they'll just collect things that they can sell. And then they may have $2 or $3 for the day to feed 4 or 5 kids. And so that desperation just closes off any reasonable thought. And so it's not that the parents are evil all the time. Sometimes they are, but it's because of desperation, and then the kids end up being, the part of the victims in a sense.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that I'll have to check out that book. Uh, One thing I've learned in my, small 43 years of being this version of myself is to really look at things from a macro. That's I feel like my biggest lesson, or like the knowledge that I've learned in this life, is instead of looking things from such close up, such emotion, everything I just expand and I say, okay, without judgment and from a neutral perspective, what is happening here? And I agree with what you're saying. I've never been in that situation, but how could I say what I would do if I was a mother desperate to feed my children and we're all starving and someone came and said, I'll pay your child could work for me, and we don't know. Like, the thing is, you just don't know. So we're not giving anyone a pass. And there are also the people that you said, this loss of consciousness, this loss of empathy, where they just have lost that connection of unconditional love, that source connection, that God's connection, where they're in a spiral, they're in this void and they don't feel. And so there's a lot of explanation. So I know there really isn't an answer to the question that I asked you, but it is nice to hear your perspective because you have seen probably the darkest than most people watching this that will ever see. And I want to commend you because, like you said, you've mentioned this several times in your books. I feel like I've accomplished what I need and now I'm on free time. Well, thank God that you're choosing as Zaysan in your free time instead of being. You could choose because I know that they've offered. You could be with the Plejarens all the time. You could be in this state of bliss and love and having your coffee and your Plejaren beer and not make light of it. I mean, you guys do a lot of amazing things too, but to make it to the simplicity of that, or just to go and explore the universe, you're choosing to, yes, then this is why I've titled this show, this conversation today, Living in Between Two Worlds, because that's what I'm calling it. You know, you could
Mhm.
choose that all the time, but yet you're choosing consciously, purposefully, and mindfully to come back here and say, I got to go back, because they'll say, oh, don't leave. And you're saying, oh, I got to go get to work. I have missions I need to go on. And you're choosing to put yourself in these situations. Why? Why do that? You don't care about popularity. You're not coming from ego. You're doing it to rescue these children who may not have anyone else to help them. And to me, like, there is nothing greater than that. And I just think that that's such a beautiful gift that you're giving back. It's almost like I've done what I came, so what else can I do? I'm going to give back. Um, am I explaining that right? I mean, I'm sure there's more to it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's absolutely right. And the funny thing is when you realize the truth, right? If you follow, you're only going to be limited. You have to be a part of it. And like in that other book that I wrote, I mean, it's too dark for most people. And I wouldn't advise it unless a person's got a strong stomach and is full of understanding because it's very dark. I became one of them in order to understand what it was I was facing. And what's funny is how what they call spirit or whatever falls into place when you're asking for it. That doesn't mean, hey, spirit, help me out. It's like when you walk the walk, right? And so I'm walking through this darkness, and I actually become one of the managers or overseer of a brothel, a child brothel. And I had to understand what was happening and to be able to talk to the people. And what I have learned is just like so far different than what you see, right? When you see these people doing rescues in the United States or claiming that they do rescues as a charity and stuff of these children, they don't. They can't. It's illegal. But what they can do is help the police. And I admire these people who go out and catch the predators. They basically document all this stuff and then hand it over to the police. That's real. But for the most part, you can't do that. You'd be in a lot of trouble. And there is no such thing really here in the States. Like what I've learned is like here in my area. I mean, everywhere I've been, I had to go out and ask police officers on the street, said, "What, do you guys have a human trafficking department?" And all of them think, "Yeah, I think so, but I'm not sure who it is and everything."
Yeah.
And so I know that they don't have that direct, and they're not actually allowed to deal with human trafficking unless they're called to a scene. And when you see these busts like from these Asian massage parlors, that's not trafficking. Those are just prostitution, and those girls aren't slaves. It's all wrong and everything, but that way the police don't need to get overtime and funding and approval from a judge, and they're not going to catch the other kind that come in from the other countries, like the Ukrainians that come in and they rent these really rich homes and that through a realtor. They work with a realtor, and they'll be there for 2 weeks and then move to another place. So no police department's going to be able to handle that. The only ones that have actual permission to do it are the FBI, and the FBI requires at least 20 kids involved, and then because they have such a long list, and they're actually doing the work. And this is another funny thing, leaving politics out of it. Trump was the first president to actually
Yeah.
create legislation that allowed law enforcement to go after these people. All the rest of them sounded really good, but all they were doing is protecting the politicians and
Exactly.
the judges that were participating. And
Exactly.
so anyways, I got to learn the real thing and to understand how it worked and how I would have to work in order to make it happen. And it wasn't necessarily going to be following any of the rules. And now here's a catch 22 that's kind of funny. And that is that it what I do is so dark and it's so hard to fluff it, right? And I've been invited by other organizations who I get the whole board gives me a standing ovation. I never see a donation and I never hear back from them because they understand, they know the truth when they hear it, and they like that. They would like to be a part of that. But from 2015, I mean, it's been very little donations. And I'm not one that is very good at asking for money because then I start to feel like I'm becoming part of them, right? The scammers, all I would do is asking for
Yeah.
money. And so it was funny when I had this experience with the Plejarens, I decided to write the book and give it to my friends. And then anything that's sold on Amazon, I'd use that. All the money goes straight into the charity. And it's the first time since 2015 that we've actually had money to go do rescues that wasn't coming all out of my pocket. And so, isn't it funny? Because the first thing I thought, I was like, who's going to give me any accreditation if I'm running a charity and stating certain things? Yet I believe in aliens, right? And I've had experience
Oh,
with aliens, but the opposite was true.
yeah.
So, I just shared it,
Yeah.
and suddenly we're doing rescues.
I feel like the people who have
Oh,
the least ego have the hardest trouble asking for money because I have my nonprofit and it's so hard for me to ask for money. And for years I was paying everything out of pocket, all the classes I was doing with children, all the things all the books I had an animation series for children. I paid for all of that with my own money. It was really hard for me to ask for money because I didn't like you. I didn't want to come off as I'm just like everyone else. And so I was like, oh, fine, I'll just pay for it myself. And I want to bring your organization to light. So tell us about your nonprofit that you have because gosh, you should be fully funded. And I know we live in a world right now that is unfortunately ass backwards and the money goes to fund the worst things. And those that try to fight against it end up getting squashed or pushed aside or look like they're crazy. So we don't actually make a change. But I truly believe that things are changing and I'm seeing it and I'm feeling it and I know we are progressing. So your organization should be up there, like along with mine and so many others who are doing things for good. So I want to tell everybody about your nonprofit and what that money goes to. And I want to put it on like every banner because people need to know about it.
yeah. I've got two names. The organization is actually the Quest, ECSS.org. But I had, like I said, I'm not fluent in the trying to promote and stuff, but a friend of mine that knows about promoting and things, he says, well, you need a different name.
Mhm.
And so I added ending child sex slavery.org. That way people can actually remember it. But, it's a nonprofit and um, we're all licensed and all that good stuff. And but what else did you want to know about that?
So how can people find out more about your projects or do you share kind of your missions? I mean, obviously after, not before. I mean, is there a place where
Yeah,
people can follow what you're doing?
on my website, I have a place that says rescues, right? And you can go in and read all of our rescues and how we did it, what it took to do it, and the whole sort of thing. And I also post each rescue I have a Facebook page that's The Quest, ECSS. And I post them all on there, plus my personal one, and also on LinkedIn, and also on what do you call Twitter. So I post that, somebody can follow really easily each of our rescues as we do them. I put a delay because I don't want the bad guys to run us down in process, right? So there's a
Yeah.
month or two before I place them. But I tell everything and how we do it and everything else. And a lot of people don't understand, you know, I actually put in how we do it. Like a lot of times we bribe people, right? We do everything against the grain, but it
I love
results
that.
in rescue. And we're the best in the world. I mean, nobody compares to us. Great Nonprofits is rated as top nonprofit since 2015. Just goes to show the results is what we get. And we don't kill people and stuff like that because we feel we would like to. Every one of us, it's that urge within us from our past and everything, but we refuse to. So what we do is we make them lose face. A lot of times, like we'll grab the guards and we'll put them to sleep, and then we duct tape them, and take all their clothes off, duct tape them, draw them out in the middle of the street. They lose face. So, that's almost worse than being killed. We got little tactics that we do in that, and um, uh, we'll pay people to create distractions, or we'll pay a police department to look the other way. One day I did an experiment, and it was when I first started. I took my life savings, it was $45,000, and I went to a town or a village that had 6 child brothels. And I removed them all, and I went to the police station and told them, one of these things, I got an offer you can't refuse. I said, I'm going to rid you of all these things, and I'll create economy for you that you'll never want to go back. And they just sort of laughed at me. And I just told them, just don't get in our way. And so I did that. We removed them all, and we brought in like cultural things. Like you would go to a tourist town, right? And then I had like several different contacts that had did tourism, and they would bring people through. And that was back in 2014 or so. And what happened was, is to this day, they've run out even the big gangs, the two major gangs out there in the world, out of their town, because they're making so much money being legit, and the people in the town are all thriving because of just commerce
Wow.
and changing the way things are done.
I
So
really admire that. That's such a unique and forward-thinking way, because it's so easy to just go in with the machine guns and kill everybody, but they'll just be replaced the next day. I mean, there's always people that will do the dirty work, but if you shift it around so they don't need to do it, to me, that's just next level. So that's I'm gonna put all your links for your books. So all your books are on Amazon. Are they anywhere else? Can you order them on your website or anything like that? Okay.
no, just it's all through Amazon.
Okay.
I simplified it.
Okay, so I'll put all your links. You are doing the Rebels of Disclosure conference in Grafton, Illinois. If you haven't got tickets, if anyone watching, oh my God, it's the best conference of the year. I'll be speaking for the third year in a row. If you can't make it in person, they have virtual tickets. You will be speaking. I don't know which day you're speaking, but do you have a topic, or you're just going to go up there and whatever comes? Do you have a
I don't even know. I don't even know what
okay?
the plans are. Just show
Okay,
up.
just show up. I'm kind of like that too. I'm like, I don't know, I'll just get up there and see what happens. So I'll see you there. And is there anything else coming up in your schedule that you want people to know about or anything?
No, 11 is being edited. It's almost ready to go. And then I got another book that's right, waiting for the editing of this book to be done. There's just so much information, that I put out there. And every time I say, like this is the end of it, and then so much happens right
Yeah.
after that I need to share. And it's valuable tools, I believe, for people if they listen to it and they apply the things that I talk about in there. And I'm seeing reflections of that from friends of mine who have applied certain things it's
Yeah.
changed everything. So
Yeah, well,
it's the real deal.
keep it up. Don't stop writing,
Yeah.
because it's like my guilty pleasure, but not guilty. It's like my pleasure when I tune out for the world, and I want to just I have I have four of them. I haven't gone to the fourth, and I will read every single one. And they're easy reads. They're really great. I mean, really well done, Zaysan. I think they're incredible. And you do have permission, because I wonder if people are thinking this, the Plejarens, like they have read them, or at least they know you have
Yeah.
their permission, so they are represented probably they're in a way that they're okay with. So they're involved, and they've some of them have read them, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
They read them too.
It's kind of funny. They use it as ammunition against me to get even with me on certain things. So, but yeah, it's kind of comical. But one thing that's really important is their diaries. So you need to read them in order.
Yeah, you do
You
need to
can't
read
just
them in order. Yeah,
yeah,
I agree with
you'd
that.
miss a
I
lot.
agree with that. You would be lost if you started in the wrong number, but they're so easy. They're an easy read. I mean, I could read one a day if I had the time. I could read one a day, because it just flows, and you don't want to put it down. Sometimes you leave chapters on hangnails, and I'm like, really? And I'm like, now I got to read the next chapter. I'm like, darn it. Come on,
Um,
half more, 30 more minutes or whatever. So they're great. They're really great. I have had such a great time with
thanks.
you today, Zaysan. Thank you so much for coming on my channel.
Yeah, thank you.
Hopefully this wasn't too exhausting, all the questions I asked.
Yeah, thank you, and bless you. I mean, spread the word.
Yeah, yeah. I will spread the word about you, and we are connected on Facebook, and I'm going to see you in May. And this isn't the last you're going to see me, because I would love to have you on, and I only got through like a third of my questions. So maybe I can have you come back again, and we'll continue the
Sure.
conversation further. So thank you for coming today. Thank you everybody for watching. I appreciate your continued support for my channel, for my work and everything that I'm doing. And thank you. And until next time, see you guys soon. Bye, everybody.
See ya.